Hi, I'm Alicia, and welcome to my Operational Innovations channel, where I focus on process tips, techniques, and strategies to help you level up in the area of project management, product ownership, and small business operations. So today's topic is from our ongoing series, the Small Business Health Check, and I am so excited that we are at number 5 in this series. We're just working our way through this top 10 tips list, and this particular topic is number 5, set aside point 3. Now I'll put the link below to the launch video that goes through those top 10 tips so you can see what the other ones are if you're new to this channel. But this is the first focus video where we talk about more of the meat about what's important here in this topic of set aside point 3. Now, as I've mentioned, I've been an entrepreneur a couple of other times before in my life, and I'm sharing with you what's helped me have a banner year last year and what helps me to continue to thrive in these times of COVID-19, global crisis, race riots, and everything else. Your mileage may vary on these tips, and so I invite you to share what's helped you, what you're doing, and what helps you stay focused on this topic of setting aside money for taxes. And that's it, folks. That's what we're talking about. We are talking about taxes. Now, I've got a smile on my face for this because, and I'll talk more about this, but I think that when we shift our perspective about these things, it can really help us. Now, the first thing is we need to know that we need to do it, because if you're coming out of being an employee and you've been an employee for most of your life, you may not remember that you need to set aside money for taxes because someone else has been handling that for you your whole professional life. And so setting aside taxes is going to be super important. So I'm going to talk about a very simple practice that I have. And before I get too far down the path on this, let me first say that this is not a replacement or even an attempt at giving tax advice. Definitely ask your tax professional about what's important for you and what your story is going to look like for your business. This video is about my practice and the discipline of putting that money aside. And frankly, my financial planner and my sister-in-law told me when I was sharing with her that I was going to do this video, she's like, you need to give me the credit for that. And I will. I will give you the credit, Dana Bath, for helping me to get my head around this idea of setting that money aside. And so I'm happy to give her a high five and credit for that suggestion and for helping me to get the practice going. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is basically my foundation, practice, and discipline of doing exactly this, setting aside point 3. Now, point 3 is 30%. And that may seem like a lot. It all depends on how much money you make, and it depends on what your tax bracket is. So you need to look into all of that. But I have this sort of, I think it's like a middle of the ground, middle of the road, if you will, number or percentage that I like to put aside. And if I have more after I've paid my taxes at the end, that's great. Always want to have enough to pay my taxes at the end. So this is simple, but it's not always easy to do. And so what do my steps look like? So the first step, and I'll kind of walk you through some, I'll share some photos with you to kind of talk through what I do here, but the steps are this. When I first get a signed statement of work from a client, I create that invoice. And I talked about that in my Do the Work video. I'll put the link to that one below. So I immediately create that invoice. And then I put a sticky note right on that invoice. I keep all my invoices that are upcoming on a clipboard. And so I print that out, I write out, I do the math. So whatever that invoice is, I do the 0.3 of that total, and I put that on a sticky note. We'll see that photo also. Stick that right there on that invoice so that I can see it, and there's no question about, down to the penny, what it is that I need to transfer over into that tax account. And then number 3, I have a totally separate, this is not really a tip, not really a step, it's more of a tip, but I have a totally separate business account and financial institution. So like I have my personal account where I have the money that I pay my living expenses and stuff in a totally separate place from this. This business account is for my main business pass-through account. I'll talk more about that. It's my tax account. And then I have a little personal account there for just, day-to-day interactions, going to the store, going to get gas, all that. I'll talk more about that too. But that having that separate tax account is just the placeholder for the money so that you're never wondering if it's mixed in with other funds and whatever. That Yeah, so that's what I've done. And then number four, the step number four is to pay those quarterly taxes. And well, like I said, I do this on the regular. I have forms, we'll talk about that. But it's really about building that practice, about the practice and the discipline about setting that stuff aside. So let me, I kind of want to just walk you through, what that looks like and, what those steps look like kind of in real life for me. So as I mentioned, step number one is I create that invoice as soon as I get that signed statement of work from the client, and I print them all off. You can see my little clipboard here, and I've got my little rainbow ribbon at the top. And so I print off the invoice, and then I immediately do the math on what the 0.3 amount of the total is. And so I put that amount right here down to the penny, and then I put a little arrow, but this is where it's going for taxes. Like if someone else needs to read this or whatever. But here's the thing, here's what I found that's happened over the past 5 years. If you don't have some sort of practice or rigor about how invoices come in and where the money goes and this kind of thing, at the time when the check arrives from the client, you've got 8 million other things going on, and you're like, you just throw it in the bank, and then you forget, you start doing whatever you do with it. And so, especially if you don't have a separate business account and you put it in with your personal finance, when it's time to look back for that money, trust me, good luck with that. So I have a totally separate account, and so I have to put to the penny where this goes. So the second thing, as I mentioned, I do the math, and that's what this sticky note is about. On this invoice, I have the printed invoice. I've got a sticky note. It's either this color or a hot pink color, and I know exactly what I'm going to be doing from a tax perspective. And I do it immediately right after I've written up the invoice. I don't wait until I get the check from the client. So the third step, and this was more the tip that I was talking about, is I have a separate business account. And so this is a totally separate financial institution from my other personal account, and then savings account. All that is in other places. And my business account here truly is a pass-through, because when I get a check from a client, they're writing it to my business name. They're not writing it to me personally. And so this account is my account for my business operational innovations. You can see the little, whoops, on this side, you can see the little logo right there. So operational innovations is what they write the check to. And so this account, I can deposit checks that are written to operational innovations. And so you can see here that I have a completely separate business tax account. And so the main business account is really a pass-through. The client sends me the check. I immediately put the 0.3 from that particular amount into the tax account, and then the rest of the money, I just move it into savings or into my regular operations, wherever that is. So it's really kind of a pass-through. Money never sits here for very long. I do have this personal account here, and I mentioned that before. So like if I'm going to get gas, or I'm going to the store, or I'm going to go, buy dinner, whatever it is, I use that account. These cards get hijacked all the time. So I never, ever use the accounts to my main, main personal accounts where I pay my mortgage and everything else. I don't even use those cards. They just sit in a wallet somewhere, because, all you need is to have that card get hijacked, and now all of a sudden you've got money siphoned out of that account. So I don't, this little account usually never has this much money in it. So this is the gas, eat out, go to the grocery store kind of account. It's not anything that, that I use for anything other than just regular operations. So number 4, set aside and pay those quarterly taxes. So I did a LinkedIn post on this because, I recognized that the day that I wrote this particular check, I pulled out my extra special sparkly Swarovski crystal pen, and I wrote a very big, for me at the time, and still at this time, a very big check. And what that means is that I made a great amount of money. So I wasn't mad at writing that check. I brought out my sparkly pen and wrote that check. And I think about, what do taxes afford us in these United States? I mean, you might be living in another part of the world and your taxes may support other things, but I know that I live in Southern California, and whether I'm paying the Internal Revenue Service or whether I'm paying the Franchise Tax Board, because in the state of California, we pay personal income taxes. I'm saying that with a smile on my face. So, having a perspective around this that is positive can help you not procrastinate and not do this. Because if you've gotten through a whole year and it's time to pay taxes and you don't have that money set aside, or you haven't been paying the quarterly estimates, you got a gigantic tax bill that's coming your way if you've made a lot of money, and that can be painful. I'm going to put a link below to just a hilarious video. So I am a huge fan of Brooke Castillo. She's the owner and idea person and CEO of the Life Coach School, and I will be referencing her in many of my subjects. She has this one called the it's about entrepreneur bookkeeping, and she talks about how she was making $300,000 and she hadn't put money aside for her taxes, and so they had to sell their boat. And so it was so heartening to hear this, because this it can happen to all of us, any of us. If we don't realize that we need to set aside this money for taxes, we can really have our feelings hurt when it's time to pay the piper. So you don't want that to happen. And so I specifically put this in my top 10 tips series, because again, as I mentioned, if you've been an employee all your life and now you're going to be an entrepreneur, and you got to take care of your own taxes. Nobody else is going to be pulling that out of a check for you. Your clients are writing checks directly to you. It is up to you to make sure that you pay and handle your tax burden. So that's that fourth tip. So you want to make sure, folks, that you set your target and make it a practice and be grateful about it. I know I am. Every time I need to sit down and write that check, I need to shift my perspective to one that is of gratitude, so that I can be mindful about setting all that out, sending all those monies aside. So that is our topic, folks. That is set aside point 3, the number 5 topic in our top 10 tips series. We are working our way through this. Share your inputs, share your insights, share your stories. If you've got a story where you had to sell your boat, I want to hear all about that. Put that down in the comments. I'd love, hey, listen, this happens to all of us. There's no judgment here. That's why I put it in the list. I put it in this list so we can all be aware. Share your insights, share your comments, share your stories. As a small business operator, or as small business operators, we're all in this together. And as a community, we're stronger if we share what's going on for us. So thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for the next drill down topic video in my top 10 tips list. Number 6, plan your income. If you like this video, I invite you to like, subscribe, and click that notify button so that you can get not only the rest of the top 10 tips series, but what's coming after that, which are the pro tips. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.